Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Z. Good morning, everyone. Here we are again, a week later, for some of us. And this morning, as you know, we'll continue with our Gospel of Matthew. Today, we'll be reading chapter 20, 19 to 28. So if you open up your Bibles, it starts on page 55. I'm sorry, not 19, 17. Chapter 20, 17 to 28. That's page 55, 56. And I think it'll be a little more obvious than normal to see what the theme of these particular pericopes are. They all tie together, so it'll be great to actually see that today. Are we all there? Page 55. All right. We start on chapter 20, 17. Now Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples aside on the road and said to them, "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and deliver him to the Gentiles to be mocked, and to scourge, and to crucify, and on the third day he will rise again." Then the mother of Zebedee's son came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something of him. And he said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Grant that these 2 sons of mine may sit one at your right hand and the other on the left in your kingdom." But Jesus answered her and said, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able." So he said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with, but to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared by my Father." And when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of Gentiles lord over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for all." So what do we see here? We see something that we continually talk about in the church, an image that we continually see in the church and in our lives. And that's the cross. The cross as a struggle and as a sacrifice. So let's delve into it. We'll start with 17 to 19 first. Here we see Jesus and the disciples heading up towards Jerusalem, and ultimately this is the last journey towards the cross. And here Christ warns his disciples that he was on his way to the cross. This being the third account in the Gospel of Matthew, that Christ warns his disciples that there is a cross that he will be going to. There was a strange inclusiveness in the suffering to which Jesus looked forward. It was a suffering in which no pain of heart or mind or body was to be lacking. In the Gospel of Mark, he says that Jesus was walking ahead by himself and that the disciples were amazed and afraid. They did not know what was happening, but they could see in every line of his face and his body that his soul was struggling. So why was his soul struggling? Why and what do the disciples see here? First, we see that he was to be betrayed into the hands of the chief priests and the scribes, and we see the suffering of the heart, broken by the disloyalty of friends. Second, he was to be condemned to death. There we see the suffering of injustice, which is hard for anyone to bear. Thirdly, he was to be mocked by the Romans. There we see the suffering of humiliation and of deliberate insult. Fourthly, he was to be scourged. There are few tortures in the world which would compare to the Roman scourging. And there we see the suffering of a physical pain. Finally, he was to be crucified. There we see the ultimate suffering of death. It is as if Christ was going to gather on himself every possible kind of suffering, physical and emotional and mental, that the world could inflict on anyone. However, even at such a time of turmoil, distress, suffering, whatever we want to call it, that was not the last of his words. That wasn't the last thing he said. For he finishes with a confident assertion of the resurrection. Where do we see that here? And the third day he will rise again, verse 19. Next, let's move on to verse 20 to 28. False and true ambition. This is one of the most revealing passages in the New Testament, and it sheds light in three directions. First, it sheds light on the disciples. Second, it sheds light on the Christian life. And thirdly, it sheds light on Christ. So firstly, it tells us three subcategories, sub-things about the disciples. First, there's ambition. The disciples were still thinking in terms of a physical reward, a personal reward, a personal distinction. They were thinking of personal success without personal sacrifice. They want it all, but they weren't thinking what they're going to have to give up for it. They wanted a royal command. They wanted Christ to say, yes, you'll be here and you'll be there. And how often do we think of that? Do we wish for that ultimate reward, yet we're not willing or even think the hard work that it'll take to get there? Whether it's in work, whether it's with children, with your children, to have them grow up to be better than you, whether it's at school or any other facet of our lives. We all have to learn and continually remind ourselves that true greatness lies not in dominance, but in a life of service. Sure, we could be CEOs of great companies, we could be presidents and all that,